Everybody kind of clear on teaching? That's one that I figure is fairly straightforward and doesn't spark a lot of discussion in our context. So the next one does. Singing.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so here's where we get into. Just let me know what you're thinking. Let's hear your arguments. What are we supposed to be singing? How should we sing it? And why do we sing when we're together? What do you think?
I don't know where it's found. Psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs.
Psalms and spiritual songs. That's both of those. Ephesians 5:18 and Colossians 3:16.
Good.
Also, all of the Psalms, right? Psalms are songs that the nation of Israel would sing. They all had different functions. You had psalms of ascent that they would sing as they were walking up the road to get to Jerusalem for the various feast days that they had to go to Jerusalem for. So you sing these specific songs when you're walking up and you first see the temple. You sing these particular songs when you're at certain points in your journey. So they had different songs for different times when they were worshiping God. They had a very structured calendar of when they would sing what songs. What about us? We're supposed to sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. That's what Paul says twice. So, what qualifies as a psalm or a hymn or a spiritual song?
Something that's set to a tune.
Something that's set to a tune, all right. Words set to a tune, I agree.
Just starting base level.
Yeah.
We can work our way up.
Yeah. Any words set to a tune?
Theologically correct.
Theologically correct words set to a tune. What about theologically correct words that are just kind of like, let's go with God exists. What if we just sing those two words 35 times to a different tune that repeats?
Sounds kind of fun.
Is that a song that we should be singing when we gather?
Not when we gather.
I have no, I think.
Not when we gather, but if we feel like, doing that just like, middle of the day, just
So it's not wrong.
I have so kind of a sure kind of, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like...
I think you go first.
Sorry. I feel like it wouldn't be wrong to do it, but it's never gonna happen because it's not like deep enough.
It's not
yeah.
deep enough. Okay, so yeah, we're
It's
So what? So I agree. It's not theologically wrong. We all agree God exists.
Yes.
All right. Is there more truth to the Christian doctrine, to the fullness of Christian doctrine than that?
Yes.
Is that even the heart of Christian doctrine? Like, what would you say is at the center of Christianity?
Christ died and resurrected.
Yeah. Okay. Christ's death and resurrection. I think the gospel. You can summarize it that way. That would definitely be, I think, what everybody in this room would say. I think that's the right answer. Some Christians would say other things are at the center of Christianity, but I think that's the correct answer. So, the songs that we should be singing together are ones that are theologically correct and, I think, capture the heart of Christianity. At least a little bit.
So I think songs, their primary purpose are what? Praise? Praise?
Good question. What's the primary purpose? So to praise, I agree. Anything more?
Praise and worship. But worship is included in the entire thing.
Right.
But I would say it's primarily to praise, humility. I think it's
right, to humble ourselves.
That's also a purpose of singing.
So that to worship like our definition of worship, right? Like the dog licks his master's hand, kind of a thing. That's what we're supposed to be doing when we're singing.
Mm-hmm. And I think
agree
that it depends on, in terms of what we should be singing, it depends on what songs do that.
What songs do
I
that?
think
So
it's a largely personal thing.
okay, let me throw one more. So would
Are we
you
talking
agree
about
that?
corporate? We're talking about corporate
Yes.
here. You said personal though.
Yes, I did.
I'm confused.
So I think that when we look at what songs, so the elder, so it's ultimately up to the elders because they, in let's say like the administration of the church, they decide what songs, the church sings. So the elders of the church say this song makes me feel this way. I praise and I'm humbled when I sing this song. Therefore, we're going to sing this song. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Okay. One. So back, you're trying to define the primary purpose of why we're singing. I would add one thing. I would say it's teaching. Also, say that the music that we are saying together is supposed to be teaching you theology. So I think that's something that should be brought into consideration when you're deciding what song. I like what you said. The elders are the ones who should be determining what songs are sung in the corporate setting. I would agree with that. We're submitting ourselves to their authority. I think that the worship leader, if we want to put that title on somebody, the music guy, should be, if not an elder, in direct submission to an elder or multiple elders who are, checking what he is bringing to the congregation to be sung.
One thing I would disagree with you on, Cameron, with what you said is I don't think it should be based on feeling.
Okay. That I agree.
I don't think it should be based entirely on feeling. I think there's a happy medium that you can find. Because, I don't know, at the risk of sounding too much like a wishy-washy hippie, music is one of those emotional things. So.
Okay, so interesting question. So, no, a little bit of a playing a trick on you guys by word choice, but I chose specifically the word singing. What about instrumental music? Does instrumental music promote the worship and fulfill the prescription set out by Paul?
Instrumental music doesn't accomplish anything other than setting, a setting.
I don't think it can be a form of corporate worship. I think it would be if you yourself are choosing to use your musical talents to worship that. Or,
Okay.
I think what I just said. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I go back and forth on that one actually myself. So, like you just said, music communicates emotion.
Yeah.
It's supposed to. You definitely, when you hear Beethoven's, what is it, ninth? Bum 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 bum. Fifth. Bum 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 bum. That sets a tone. Very differently than when you hear, let's say Mozart with the bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum ba reveille. Very different tone, right? The music itself communicates a tone and emotion and image. And so, in that sense, I could see having a corporate worship experience where you are trying to communicate the tone or image of submission to God. I think it's pretty darn hard to do. But I wouldn't say it's completely impossible, outside the realm of plausibility. Same thing goes with other forms of the arts in church. I could see it's possible, really hard to do, and even harder to do well. So something that comes into this discussion, which do I have it on there? Yeah, I don't have it on the side. So what about quality? That's a
big thing.
music is specifically a skilled labor sort of thing. Whether it's singing or non-singing, and bring in any other arts that you want to bring into the church. The skill involved matters. Reactions.
I would agree with you in the fact that we should all, music is kind of one of those things, whether like you're good at it, or at least you care about it enough to be good at it, or you're just really not.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I think that would be more of a, God did not gift you in this specific way, so you should try to find somewhere else to serve.
So should you
Unless
not
you're
sing?
feeling... No, because not as a you should sing when you're in a congregation, but you shouldn't be leading it. It's kind of like what you said about like, just let me finish my thought. Y'all can disagree with me later. This is just
That's how the discussion
my
works.
opinion
Keep going.
right
Keep
now.
going.
Yeah. So it's kind of like what you said earlier about like, you know, the teacher thing. Like you should know this better than the people, like, you know, the average people. I think it's the same way for...
You should be able to carry a tune
Yeah.
if you're expecting people to listen to you carry a tune.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's my opinion.
Right.
I don't think skill matters at all.
Okay.
There's no biblical support for you should be skillful. Like, you have to be skilled in order to do this, first of all.
Keep going.
But also, it's more, it's harder to get into a mode of worship, as I'll put it, when there's someone who's not musically gifted trying to lead worship
Okay.
or lead music.
What do you mean by a mode of worship? So I'm
Like,
clear.
So if I hear if somebody who's leading music who is not musically gifted, I would tend to be more judgmental and saying they should not be doing that, they aren't good at that,
Okay.
instead of doing as I should be doing and worshiping.
So it's
It's a distraction.
distraction, where you're trying to lick your master's hand, and this person keeps like nudging you in the side.
And you've got a
and
flea
you're like,
biting you in the butt, basically.
Okay, yeah.
If we're going with the dog.
Yeah, let's go, let's
metaphor.
stick with the metaphor. Let's stick with the dog metaphor. You're trying to lick your master's hand, and the flea is supposed to be helping you lick the master's hand, and instead he's biting you in the butt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
Sucking you
I've
dry.
still been thinking about Ratatouille since last week, so it's on the brain.
I don't think I'm going to be able to find this off the top of my head. There were two places that sprung to mind.
But when it talks about leading something, like leading worship, is that what you're talking
Well, Cameron's comment that there's nowhere in the Bible that talks about skill being a requirement. Is that-
Requirement for yeah.
For leading.
Well,
Again, we're
are you
still talking about the difference between corporate and private.
well,
Yeah.
and or
And I'm
just
looking at a corporate.
leading versus being led.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a difference in that.
Yeah.
I think. Like, could it be something where, as when God's giving the rules for making the tabernacle,
That's what I was looking at.
and how there's two skilled artisans?
Yeah, go to Exodus 36, verse 1. That was one of the two that popped in my head.
Exodus 32, you said?
36,
36.
verse 1. So yeah, this is in the midst of giving all the instructions on building the tabernacle and all the regulations. Chapter 35, verse 10, let every skillful craftsman among you come and make all that the Lord has commanded, the tabernacle, the tent, covering hooks. Chapter 36, verse 1, Bezalel and Holiab, and every craftsman in whom the Lord has put skill and intelligence to know how to do any work in the construction of the sanctuary shall work in accordance with all that the Lord has commanded. In whom the Lord has put skill gets repeated
Mm-hmm.
10 or 15 times throughout the next few chapters. Now, to your point, this is about building the place of worship, not necessarily leading the act of worship. I think there's still a little bit of an argument there that skill is required. Now, to do the worshiping versus leading the worship, that's the question. Where is the idea of a worship leader anywhere in the Bible? I think the closest you can get is all of the Psalms that start with to the choir director. And I don't think that that's what that word means. So I don't have anywhere in the Bible that I would turn to that says that there's such a thing as worship leader. Practically speaking, though, there's always somebody leading the music.
Mhm.
That's the nature of music. You have to have a single person who's keeping time, leading the charge, so to speak, when it comes to making music to the Lord. And so the way that different congregations, denominations deal with the question of music and worship leaders and how does all this play out, skill required, what songs do we sing, varies widely, most particularly among Protestant churches. Church of Christ has no instruments. They're a distraction. Their instruments are like having a bad singer being the main singer.
No, seriously, he came from a Church of Christ background. That's why he's so focused on. There was Steve Spicer.
Yeah.
There was one week when we didn't have any instruments or whatever. He's like, it doesn't matter. I'll lead it. We're gonna, and
Did we sing acapella? I actually
I
really
remember
enjoyed
the
that.
acapella very vividly.
I enjoyed that. That was nice.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a cappella.
And they're some of the best singers. They know how to harmonize. I know nothing of all that. But
Fundamentalist Baptists, they say hymns and only hymns, and they have to be written between the years of 1750 and 1850, and if they're not real hymns. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not a lot. High Church will go according to what the order of the service says. So we will sing the song that has been written for us, cast down for us from on high. By on high, they mean from whoever's directly above them in the chain of hierarchy.
like, there's a song that Matt Maher wrote. Matt Maher is a Catholic.
Yeah.
And there's a song that he wrote that's, I think, is intended to be like a song for the Easter
Yeah.
season or whatever. But we sing it whenever, and I can't remember what song it is right now.
Yeah, I know which one
But,
you're talking about. I can't think right now either.
But anyway, and so I'm reminded of that.
Yeah. Bible church, very very often you'll hear the blended worship, or the mixed worship, or how some of the other ways that we have a contemporary worship with a traditional flair. I've heard that before.
I'd rather have blended worship than have one certain, like what we used to have, or what we still kind of have, where one service is hymns and the other service is all choruses, or modern, or whatever you want to call them, newer songs. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't know why. I just, I don't like
Because
it.
we play the same songs in both services.
Okay, well, we
I
used
think
to
they just
have
make.
that.
I think they just make they sound engineer it different, where it's not so loud.
Well, we used to have that.
Yeah, I know. I'm just letting it be.
The question of who's going to do it. Independent churches are always talking about hiring professionals.
That's money that you don't need to spend, unless you need to spend it. Depends on who's in your church.
Yeah. So, which one's right?
Oh, that lends itself to the skill or whatever.
The skill question, right?
Yeah.
If we don't have anybody skilled in the church in leading music, should we hire somebody to come and lead our music for us?
I think we had one of the higher bases.
Here's my kind of my litmus test, or the way that I would say you should approach this question. What?
She's trying to ask me a sneaky question. That
No,
didn't need to
it's
be
not a
sneaky.
sneaky question. I was just trying to not interrupt Steven, which, forget about that.
There's only 4 of us in the room.
The guy playing bass, he's not normally a guy playing bass, but is he the same guy that sometimes plays the drums in the cajon? Or is it different? And it's a different
Pretty sure
position?
it's a different guy.
Okay, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I've never actually paid attention to the guy before.
Now looped out with that.
Okay.
I know, that's why it wasn't a corporate question.
What-
It was a corporate and individual.
Well, then don't ask me.
Which one's right? Here's kind of my litmus test of how you should approach this question. Start out asking what's the point? Why are we doing this? Why are we singing? I think the way you summarized it is good. We're supposed to be worshiping, and get the image of the dog looking at its master's hand, and we're supposed to be teaching. The words that you sing will stick more than the words that you hear spoken, not singing. That's just part of the way God has designed the world. I love that Martin Luther quote. Next to the word of God, music deserves the highest praise. The gift of language combined with the gift of song was given to man that he should proclaim the word of God through music. It sticks. The early heresies were spread by music. They knew that when you put something to a tune, you remember it better. And so they would put to a tune, Jesus is not God, he is the first created being of God. That's how they spread their message. And guarantee you guys know theological truth based on songs that you learned even when you were a little kid are still stuck there.
Quick question about the teaching.
Yeah.
Do you believe it's wrong to sing a song that was not created with an intention to not teach? Like songs have to be created with an intention to teach, or? So
I'm about to touch on that tangentially, but
okay.
Short answer to your question: no, I don't think it's wrong, but I don't think it's the best. So that's first to figure out why you're doing what you're doing. Once you figure out why you're doing what you're doing, figure out why you're doing what you're doing together. Why are we singing corporately versus when you're singing in private? Similar to what you're asking. If somebody wrote a song intended to be sung in private, should we be singing corporately? Probably not. At least that's going to be a mismatch of intent. So don't do it. Somebody wrote a song not intending to teach, and you're singing it corporately, where teaching is part of the purpose of why you're singing. It's not going to be the best song to choose. I'm sure there are better songs to choose then. This is part of the wisdom of the elders that should come into play. What we're doing together is learning together and affirming with one another. This is what I believe. This is why I hate that we turn out the lights when we sing in our churches today. You should be looking at the other people you're singing with. You're like, I believe this. Do you believe this? This is the unspoken communication that should be going on between you as you're proclaiming truth together. You're uniting your own soul with the other through song. This is what all these are. You've seen the triangle example of marriage, where you have the man down here and the woman down here and God up here, and the idea is if you're both pointed towards God, you're going to get closer together. That's what you're doing through song in worship. You guys are looking at God together, and as you look at God together, you get closer to one another. And that's why we're all singing the same thing at the same time. And that thing that you're singing better be true. It better be pointed to God. Otherwise, you're both pointed away from God, getting closer together. And that's terrible. People united in the pursuit of non-God gives disastrous results. People united in the pursuit of God gives godly results. So there's a lot of different. So first question is, why are you doing it? Second, why are you doing it together? Third question is a question of quality. How well do the songs that you're singing and the way that you're singing them achieve those two goals of why you're doing it and why you're doing it together? And how you answer those questions is this song teaching? Is this song uniting me with other people, or is it individualizing me? Is it, what do these songs do? It becomes pretty clear, and it's pretty easy to answer those questions based on any song you ask. And that'll determine what are the best songs to use in a corporate worship setting. And there are better songs to use and worse songs to use. And those that preach the gospel tend to always be my favorite, because that gets at the heart of Christianity. It's firmly pointed directly at who God is, what he's done through Christ. Other songs that teach about peripheral things that are important but are not at the heart of Christianity are fine, but they don't endure as long because they're not pointed directly at God. Those are the three questions I would ask for figuring out corporate worship. What's a good song? What's a bad song? Who's right in all of this? Well, they all have merit in different situations as far as the mode that they've chosen to express this act lines up with those purposes of corporate worship.
So you said three questions. I've only got two. Why are you doing it? Why are you doing it together? And what's the third one?
A question of quality. How well does the things that you're doing achieve those two purposes of why you're doing it and why you're doing it together? Does that kind of make sense, at least?
So, given that a song is theologically correct,
one that's theologically correct and is at the heart of the gospel, or just one that's theologically correct? So let's go with God exists.
Yes.
The Buddhist could sing, or the Hindu could sing that.
Yeah, so a song that is strictly theologically correct. and has been selected by the elders to be sung as part of your worship service, do you think that you should put aside your own personal opinion about the song?
Yes, I do. Very much so. Yeah, so let's say the elders decide to sing the song God Exists, that we're going to sing 35 different ways in just those 2 words over and over again. Now, the Hindu could sing that. It's still true. God exists. What we mean by those 2 words is going to be very different than what the Hindu means.
You should write a song about that. You should make God exist.
Yeah. But that would be a bad song in my mind. Or not as good of a song for corporate worship as one that communicates the heart of the gospel. That's why some songs are better than others. That's why Come Behold the Wondrous Mystery is my favorite modern song that I've heard, because it communicates the truth of the gospel in such an eloquent and passionate way that sticks, that teaches something. See the true and better Adam come to save the hell-bound man. That's straight out of Paul's theology, and it's all about the gospel. I love it. As opposed to, for example, the song that we sang today, Let the King of My Heart be the man. You are good, oh, oh, you are good, oh, oh. 5 more times. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let, Okay, we get it. That's not helping me see the beauty and the majesty of who God is as much as the verses of that song. That's the thing. John McMillan does that all the time. He'll write these wonderfully poetic verses that get at the heart of the gospel, and these choruses that are just, I'm like, blow my brains out.
It's like artists who have an excellent album, and yet they have 1 or 2 songs on the album that are for radio play.
Yeah.
It's the same idea, I think.
Yeah. And so John McMillan is a great example of a guy who I really like and I really hate all at the same time. Love You Swore. The verses of that song are great. And the chorus is, oh, oh, whoa, whoa.
It's the whoa song. I don't know.
It's just,
The chorus is
I know you can write better songs that more accurately get at the heart of what worship is. So do it. Be skillful at your craft. Do well what God has gifted you to do. Anyway, I'm starting to get onto a rant. But yes, I think you should put your personal preference aside if what you're singing is under the authority of the elders and is not actually wrong. Unfortunately, lots of songs are not even hitting that bell nowadays. I have to mentally edit half of the songs that we sing at my church. And I do not proclaim the lines that are not true. And I'm looking at my fellow brothers, and I'm trying to implore them to join me in singing what is true together and not what is false. There's 3 of us who, a certain song will come up, and we know we're going to sing what is true together, and we're not going to sing those lines that aren't true. One of them's an elder, so.
I remember there was one song that we used to sing, and this was a long time ago before y'all moved. It may have even been before y'all moved to Singapore.
Really?
When your mom used to sing for like women's Bible study and all this other stuff. But there was a song that she like rewrote a couple of the lines because it just wasn't. You thought of me above it all.
Yeah.
It was a Michael W. Smith song. Mm-hmm. You thought of me above it all. At the foot of I don't remember which one it was. Anyway, something about that. You thought of me, but no, you didn't think of me at the cross. You weren't thinking of me. I was not even that's not. Anyway.
Yeah, and there's lots of songs that are easy to fix. Mm-hmm. Then you get into a discussion of is it right to change the intent of a writer's song, and
or do you just not sing it at all?
Or do you just not sing it at all? Get on those conversations. We didn't even get into the 3rd thing that we're supposed to do, and it's already 4:30. So we'll just pick up here next week. Talk about prayer. I mean, communion and baptism is going to take just as long as singing did. So
you should have known singing was going to take a long time.
Yeah, that's why I put it first.
Because that's
a hot button issue.
Yeah. Churches
I will say,
over it.
People splitting churches over the style of things that are sung is silly. Churches splitting over what is sung, the content of what is sung, is not silly. This is one of the main ways that we praise God, one of the main ways we worship, and so you should be doing it at least somewhat right. There are right ways and wrong ways to do it.
Well, and we didn't even talk specifically about, maybe we just didn't, this part we didn't get to, but like, okay, I'm going there. The presentation of it.
Yeah.
Like you have the two different.
Yeah, so that's
you
what
know,
I was gonna.
Is it like, am I here to see a concert?
Correct.
With smoke and, I always called it smoke and mirrors. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
and lights and all that. I mean, am I here to see a concert, or
You get those two questions again.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? And why are we doing this together? And it'll answer a lot of those questions of how should this be done. I'll tell you something that I love. I forget which denomination it was. I was in a church, and they only had one guy leading the songs. It was him and a guitar. And they had him in the back in the sound booth, and everybody was just looking at the empty stage and singing together. And they had the words on the screen that they could all sing along with. And so there wasn't any guy performing at all. I loved that. It got at the what are we doing and why are we doing it together. Now, having the guy up front sometimes helps to see the guy who's leading you in song, and he's joining you in the worship that you're doing together. So him being able to see you being able to see him, I get that. That's reasonable. But there is that sort of gradation. At what point do these things stop achieving the purpose of what we're doing? And become a distraction.
I think it's up to the person who is leading to establish what is actually happening. And when I went to Big House with my parents on their, let's say their launching day, Ryan Kennedy was leading, and he established that he said that he was not there to play for the congregation. He established that before he started teaching and singing. That was one of the best parts.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Is he?
His daughter. Some pictures.
Who's what? Huh?
That's Ryan who's here.
Yeah.
Huh?
Oh yeah, not Ryan Kennedy. Sorry, wrong Ryan.
We'll finish on.
I was talking about. Never mind. Just.
Finish on singing. The fact is everybody can sing. Not everybody can sing well.
Yeah.
So everyone should sing. Not everyone should sing into a microphone.
Yeah.
That's the basic point.
So basically.
The question of the choir.
I was right.
I think the choir. If you've never been in a church that had a church choir leading the congregation, I think it's a wonderful thing. It's you get the portion of the congregation, and you got some really bad singers in a choir. But if you've ever heard a choir sing, you can mask a lot of bad voices by having a lot of voices. And so that's the point, is the congregation is one big choir at that point. We're all supposed to be singing together. And if you don't have anybody on microphones, you eliminate the problem of bad people singing into microphones. And you don't have to worry about making sure the good people are singing into microphones. You just have everybody singing.
And it takes away the whole aspect of someone being on stage performing.
Correct.
When you have a full
Pointing us to them instead of pointing us to God.
No,
Right.
We're going back to
I
somewhere stupid. So.
I agree, and I missed.
Get bed.
I've never ever liked that the bottom form, where you just have like 3 or 4 singers up front, and I'm just.
But it's
that's just a
also
preference.
availability. Because we don't have enough people to sing in a choir at our church nowadays.
Right.
Not enough people would.
Yeah,
Volunteers.
it's also,
I get it. I know.
to be fair to the bottom picture, the question of quality that we were talking about, skill in labor, the quality of music and singing that is produced by the individual sometimes is better than the quality of music that is produced by the choir. Now, I think if you're doing choirs right, they often outweigh and end up being equal quality, and they eliminate the con of potentially worshiping the person instead of worshiping God. But there's both of those arguments. There is a pro and con to each of them.
Yeah, I know.
All right, we'll get off this horse, and so next week we'll pick up with prayer and confession.